Good evening, everybody. This is Rachel Jensen here. We're really excited to talk with you tonight about Belize. Now, I noticed a couple of people are still signing on. Sometimes GoToWebinar makes you download the latest software. So what we're going to do for the next couple of minutes as people continue to log on is practice with the question section of the control panel. You should see the question section and chat section in the question section. What I'm going to ask you to do is type in where it is that you are calling in from. We had about 650 people register for the webinar tonight, and this is obviously one of our biggest webinars yet, one that we've seen so much excitement from people and people from all around the world. Now, some people were calling in from Asia, so it's probably a little bit later, early for you there. I guess depends on what time zone you're in. But call in let us know where it is that you're calling in from. So we have Kenneth here. Ken, I think you're there in Florida. We have Tony C calling in. We have Ken again, Jocelyn from Puerto Rico, Claude from Houston, George from Fort Lauderdale. We have John in Southern California, James in Valrico, Florida, Jennifer in San Clemente, California, Wally in Thailand. Awesome, Wally. Thank you for joining us. We have Bruce from Philly, Dan from Kelowna, British Columbia, Charles from Edmonton, David from Louisville, Kentucky, Ken, yes, he is there in Port St. Lucie. Linda is in Boston. Glenn is in Ottawa. We have St. Augustine Van. Wally let us know that it's 6 a.m. his time. Well, again, thank you for joining us. We have Chris calling from Kentucky. Hey, Glenn, nice to see you on. We have Barbara from Visalia, hope I pronounced that right, California. Russell from Houston. Greg from Germany. Awesome. Thank you so much, Greg. Chris from Texas City. Glenn from Colorado. Deanna's in Mexico. Rex in Indiana. Frederick from Canada, Garth from Oregon, and it just keeps going. This is awesome. I'm really excited to share with you information about Belize. This is one of my favorite topics to talk about, and for those on the line, I hope it becomes one of yours as well. Now, what I would ask you to do quickly, if you don't yet have a pen and paper in front of you, please go grab one. Or perhaps you're more of a digital person and like to take your notes on the computer or on your phone, that's fine too. Just have something to take notes with because this is going to be a very comprehensive webinar. And because we had so much interest in this presentation, I have two special guests that are going to be on the line with me. And I'm not going to reveal quite yet who they are, but they are going to give you a special piece of information that we didn't advertise. So this is really great. This is information that you'll want to hear, information you'll want to remember. We are also recording the webinar, so if at any point you do want to go back to the presentation, listen to it again, share it with friends and family, you are more than welcome to do that as well. And lastly, I would like to thank a couple of people, Mikkel Thorpe, Callista Shepard, Carla Raymond, Melissa Denbar, Derek Kendall Smith, Jocelyn Ucedo, and Fredman and Austin from our Global Affiliate Program, who really helped to make this program and this webinar a success. So thank you, everybody. Now, to get started, my name is Rachel Jensen. I'm the Vice President of Sales with ECI Development, and I live in Belize, specifically on Ambergris Key. I've called this home for the past 7 years. Grew up in New York, the suburbs of Manhattan, and have to say it was a completely different change in pace, change in lifestyle. You go from this go, go, go sort of mentality to a more relaxed pace of life. I mean, what you see in the pictures for Belize are pretty much what it looks like in real life here. We have the Caribbean Sea and palm trees and wonderful beach bars and live music all the time. And it's definitely a very different type of environment. So I'm here to talk to you today about Belize generally. We're going to talk about the country. We're going to talk more specifically about different regions, talk about things for you to do, and then also focus in on some opportunities in the real estate sector. This is an incredible time to be in real estate, to own real estate on the island in Belize generally. Like I mentioned to you, I've been here over the past 7 years and have seen this incredible boom in real estate since then. More and more people are getting familiar with the country. We're seeing more traffic in terms of more planes, but I don't want to ruin it yet. We're going to get through that during the presentation. Can everybody hear me okay? I just saw something from Richard that says no sound. I'm guessing you wouldn't just type yes into the question section if you are able to hear me there. If I don't see anything, I'm going to assume you can't hear me. Okay, perfect. It looks like you can. Thank you for the feedback. So one of my special guests that I have on tonight is ECI Development CEO Mike Cobb. And Mike is going to tune into a couple of the slides that we have here. But first, I want to introduce him and have him say a couple of words. Mike is truly a spectacular, forward-thinking individual who came to the region over 2 decades ago. I don't want to spoil his story. I'll let him tell it. But he really had the foresight and the vision to help consumers who are looking for high quality product south of the border and deliver that to them. Mike speaks at dozens of conferences around the world, from National Association of Realtors to conferences that focus on investing overseas and life as an expat. So with that, Mike, I'd like to introduce you here to the webinar. And why don't you give us a couple of words about ECI Development and perhaps a little bit more on your story in Belize?
Well, sure. Rachel, thanks for inviting me on this evening. I'm just absolutely flabbergasted. I mean, with over 600 folks registering for this webinar, I mean, that is phenomenal. And I think it really speaks to the interest in living overseas generally, Belize in this case very specifically. You know, we've been at this for 24 years, and as you can see from the slide here, you know, we don't, as a company, we don't just work in Belize. We work throughout the region with many different geographies, because, you know, one of the things we understand is, in fact, probably some of the people on this webinar are looking at other countries besides Belize as they explore their offshore opportunities, right? Whether it's investment, as a place to live, a vacation property, retirement property, whatever it is, right? A lot of people look at many different things before they settle on one or two options. And so what we as a company have done is we've said we want to serve folks who want to own a property overseas, and we want to serve them with really excellent, high quality, affordable luxury product. And that's what we've been able to do throughout the region. Again, letting people pick something from a vineyard community to something on the Pacific Ocean with the Gulf kind of feel, or something in Belize, which is Caribbean, and the diving and the snorkeling and the Caribbean aqua waters. I mean, it really is an incredible world of opportunities, and ECI has kind of picked some of the best and most popular destinations and then created communities for people who want to live overseas. So that's really kind of our mission. You know, our story starts all the way back in 1994 when I went for my very first trip to Belize. 1995, I bought my very first rental property on Ambergris Caye, Belize. So you know, so we've been working in the region for 24 years. We started ECI Development in 1996. So you know, we're 23, almost 24 years old now as a company. And again, we work in many different parts of the region throughout Central and South America. And I think the important takeaway from this is, you know, we've been doing this a long time, 23, almost 24 years now. We've got a great team of people. Rachel, you thanked a few folks when you got on. I want to thank you and your sales team for getting the word out and doing a great job of letting folks know what's out there, what's available, and how they can take advantage of it. So again, I thank everybody who decided to join us this evening for the webinar. You're in great hands with Rachel and her team. And then, as she mentioned, we do have one other special guest coming up at the end, because Belize is not just about real estate. I'm not gonna pull the punchline here, but Belize is much more than just real estate. And for many of you, I did scroll through a large number of the 600 registrations. I sorted by comments. And so what I wanted to do was find out the questions and comments that people had about Belize. And we saw that a lot of folks are looking at things other than just the real estate. So we wanted to be inclusive of some other things in Belize as well. So with that, Rachel, I think I'll turn it back over to you. Again, thank you everybody for joining us this evening. Rachel, you've got a phenomenal group, and I know a great presentation lined up for us this evening.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Mike, for joining us. You are right there. We do have a fantastic presentation in store for everybody today. And as you have any questions that pop into mind, just jot those down in that question section of the control panel. We will answer questions at the end of the presentation. I mentioned this a little bit earlier, but the presentation will probably be a little bit longer than an hour. So I understand if you do have to sign off, since we did mention that it would be an hour, but if you're able to stay on for longer than that, we'd love to have you stay with us, listen to our special guests, and of course, get your questions answered. So with that, we are going to jump right to a poll. And in one moment here, you are going to have a poll there on your screen. Have you been to Belize yet? And simple answer, yes or no, not yet. And we're going to have a couple of these polls throughout the presentation. So be ready, stand by your computer and ready to answer them. And we'll give you 5 more seconds. We have 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. All right, it looks like I'm going to share the results here on the screen. You should be able to see them in a moment. We have 23% of folks who said no. I'm looking at the numbers there, and that doesn't quite add up to 100, but you know what? That's okay. Let's go to webinar for you. And then we had 78% of people who said no, not yet. So good to see that we do have some newbies here. For those of you who have been to Belize, thank you for joining us, and hopefully you'll learn something new about the country. All right, continuing on here. During our presentation, we're going to discover the top 7 reasons why people are looking at Belize. And Mike, you said it exactly right, that it's not just about real estate in Belize. There are so many other reasons why people are coming to the country, and we're going to talk about those with you. In addition to that, there's one bonus advantage about why people are choosing Belize, and this is where our special guest is coming in. So this is going to be at the end of the presentation, so stay tuned to hear it. We're going to explore the hottest spot in Belize. We're going to also look at opportunities for profit, real estate opportunities for profit, and go through your question and answers. In addition to that, we do have a couple of free gifts for you at the end of the webinar. So please, like I mentioned before, if you're able to stay on for the entire presentation. Alrighty, I hope you have your pen and paper ready, because we are going to jump into our webinar now. So a couple of quick facts about the country. It's small. Belize is small. It's about the size of Massachusetts. Population-wise, it's about 350,000 people, about 368,000 people, it says there on the screen. It does increase a little bit each year, but that's still a very, very small country. That's the size of a small city in the United States. We do have a representative democracy here. We have a prime minister, and the folks do vote who they want to be the prime minister. Belize gained their independence in 1981 from Britain, so it's still a fairly young country, but they do have prime ministers and their own democracy. Belize also uses the Belize dollar. It's 2 Belize dollars to 1 US dollar. That's at a fixed rate. So for example, if you go into a supermarket and you see that something is $50, then you cut that in half and it equals $25 US. So it's not bad if you're coming in from the US for the first time to Belize and you see these prices that seem a little bit crazy, but then you cut it in half. Now, the worst is when you go back to the States and you go to the supermarkets and then you start cutting the prices in half and you realize, oh no, that's not how it should be. But pretty easy for you to do the currency conversion when you're down here. So a lot of folks are looking at Belize because of the proximity to North America. And with all the direct flights that are coming down now, we're going to talk about that in a moment, it is getting easier and easier to get here. I was on a plane yesterday coming in from El Salvador, and it was neat to see that it wasn't just a North American demographic that was coming in. I was sitting next to a Brazilian. In addition to that, there was a Peruvian. There were folks from Switzerland on the plane. There was quite a good group being represented there. But we've been seeing more and more direct flights being introduced to Belize City, because what the airlines realize is they want to be able to provide service to where people want to go. So as a result of airlines doing their due diligence and realizing that there's this huge demand for people who want to come to Belize, they've introduced new direct flights to the countries. We have WestJet and Air Canada coming directly from Canada, so that's great for the Canadians who are on the line. Southwest, this was a huge deal when Southwest started coming to Belize. because there's something called the Southwest effect, making it more affordable for people to get to the country. So what we started seeing was more families coming down. We started seeing children bringing their parents or their grandparents down to the country. And so it made it more affordable to bring larger groups down. In addition to the traffic that we're seeing, there's been increased number of flights on one of the domestic air carriers, two of the domestic air carriers, Tropic Air and then Maya Air as well. A couple of the big new airlines and routes that were introduced over the past few months. One is Sun Country from Minneapolis St. Paul Airport. So this is huge. All the folks who are there in the northern part of the United States and even those who are close in Canada, just hop on the plane and you're down in Belize in just a matter of a few hours. Also having Aeromexico coming from Mexico City introduces other demographics of folks who are able to get to the country easier. And something that was really big was Copa Airlines and Tropic Air Alliance, or had an alliance and announced that you were going to be able to get to these destinations in Belize easier, because Belize City is the only international airport here. So you have to fly into Belize City, and then depending on where you want to go in the country, you'd fly to that destination. So Tropic Air and Copa have an alliance where you just need one plane ticket in order to get to your final destination. So like I mentioned, there are two regional air carriers, Tropic Air and Maya Air. This is one of the quickest ways to get around. It does tend to be a little bit more expensive than taking a bus or renting a car if you're able to do that, or taking a water taxi if you're going out to the Keys. But this is great for anybody to know who's looking to explore the country. Like I mentioned, you'll fly into Belize City, and if you can follow my cursor right over here, Belize City International Airport. There's also a municipal airport in Belize City, but if you're coming from an international destination, you will land here. And then you can see all of the dash lines where you're able to get to in the country. You're able to take a 15-minute puddle jumper over to San Pedro. Kikaker's another island out here, Corozal, San Ignacio. You can see here on the map. I don't necessarily have to read them to you, but in addition to that, Tropic Air and Maya have international flights in the region, in the sense that it goes to Cancun, Merida, Guatemala, Honduras. So these are really convenient ways to get around the country. I'd also recommend, if you want to explore, go to the jungles, go out to the Keys. When you're on the mainland, you can rent a car. It is safe to rent a car, but here's a tip, and I don't have it written down, so write this down, is you'll want to rent a 4x4 because especially when it's during rainy season, the roads can get a little bit muddy. But if you're looking to go out to the Keys, then you can easily take a water taxi to get from San Pedro Ambergris Key to Belize City. Costs about $35 round trip. So whereas flying, for example, costs about $150 round trip. So just depends on how it is you want to travel. Some folks prefer water taxis, some prefer cars, some prefer flying. All right, now this brings us to our first poll, or a second poll rather. It's going to pop up there on the screen. How many districts are there in Belize? This is a bit of a trick question since I haven't told you the answer yet, but how many districts are there in Belize? I'll give you 10 more seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And jot down your answer, because we are going to cover the answers at the end. And you want to know what you put down. How many districts are there in Belize? We'll close that poll and get to that answer at the end of the presentation. So after each poll, I am going to provide you with a tip. Now this one is use coconut oil around your ankles to beat the no-see-ums. So this is a good tip regardless of where you are in the world. If you're going to a beach, chances are there may be little no-see-ums in the sand. And if you want to prevent them from biting you, just put some coconut oil around your ankles and on your legs. And here in Belize, you can get coconut oil by walking into any grocery store, and it's fresh and smells delicious, but you're able to do that, and hopefully you don't end up with any no-see-um bites. All right, why Belize? Reason number 2 why people are coming to Belize, because it's familiar yet exotic. And what I mean by that is because it was a British colony, they do use the British law here. In addition to that, English is the official language, which surprises a lot of people because of the location within Central America. But English is, in fact, the official language of Belize, and common law is also the law that they practice, which for us from the United States and Canada, this is what we're familiar with. And a fun fact is they do drive on the right-hand side of the road. regardless of being a British colony, they drive on the right-hand side of the road. Third reason why people are coming to Belize is because there's quite a bit of financial and banking security here. And I'm going to talk about a couple of the advantages in the financial side of, and this pertains a little bit more to ownership of real estate or investing generally, but there's no capital gains tax here. So for those investors who are looking to own real estate, perhaps let it appreciate over time and then sell it, you have no capital gains tax here in Belize. In addition to that, rental income tax is very minimal. It's taxed at 1.75%. 1.75% is what your rental income is being taxed at, and that's investment income generally. So there's some big advantages there. Lastly, you see here on the screen that banks require a 24% liquidity. And I'm going to invite Mike Cobb back on the line to talk a little bit more about why that's a big advantage, and then also talk about why owning or having a bank account in Belize makes sense for some folks.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Rachel. Many of you know that my very first business in Belize was actually a mortgage company because there was no mortgage money. It was a situation where people would come to Belize and they'd want to buy a property, and a bank in the States or in Canada would not loan them the money to buy the property, and a bank in Belize wouldn't lend a foreigner money to buy their property. So my business partner and I, we started a mortgage company in 1995, 96 to provide mortgages to North Americans wanting to buy property. And as that business grew and grew and grew, we applied for a banking license. We got our banking license in 2003, and it became Key International Bank. I'm on the board of directors, one of the founders, obviously, on the board and on the management committee. And the liquidity issue that Rachel brought up is really important. I mean, I don't know what the official liquidity requirement in the States is. I think it's 6 or 7% maybe. And what that means is for every dollar deposited in a bank, the bank has to keep 6 or 7% of that money in overnight money or very liquid instruments with other banks. Well, in Belize, the minimum requirement is 24%. And so 24 cents of every dollar is statutorily required to be held in cash assets by the bank. So it creates a very, very stable banking environment. Sadly, and I know this is something that frustrates folks, it also makes banking a little bit more expensive because a lot of that money can't be utilized for lending and other purposes. It has to stay in cash as a cash reserve for the bank. Anyway, a long story short on that, the reason I wanted to bring up the bank and just mention it is that for a lot of people looking overseas, the first easy step is to open a bank account, because almost everything you would do after that, you'd probably want to have a bank account in place. Just so you could move money in if you were buying a property, if you're making investments, or whatever those reasons are. And as a banking jurisdiction, Belize is a great one. Everybody speaks English. It's the first language, the native language. All the paperwork and contracts and application forms are all in English, and they're legal in English. That's a big deal. They're legal in English. And so for folks looking to take that first, what I would call baby step offshore, opening a bank account is a great way to do it. It'll give you access to things that you can't have in the States generally. If you want to hold your deposits in foreign currencies, if you want to have Swiss francs or euros or British pounds, you can do that. You can hold your currency in those. You can hold your deposit in those currencies. And the only other thing I would mention is that, and this is really important if you're a U.S. citizen, you as a U.S. citizen have a reporting requirement if you have an offshore bank account. There's nothing bad about it. It's just you have to tell the federal government every year that you have a foreign bank account. It's easy to do. And it doesn't really compromise any privacy you have vis-a-vis other private individuals. Obviously, the U.S. government knows that you have a bank account, but but the banking privacy vis-a-vis individuals and corporations is still very, very secure in Belize. So a lot of great reasons to open a bank account, very easy to do. The one important thing to remember if we're U.S. citizens is to make sure that we fill out the appropriate reporting forms on an annual basis. So anyway, I think that was it, Rachel. If there was anything I missed, let me know that.
No, that was great, Mike. And I know I have had some people send me questions before this webinar, asking me questions about banking in Belize. So what I would ask folks to do who are interested in learning more, maybe about banking in Belize generally, or perhaps learn more about what it takes to open a bank account or get a loan with KeyBank, just email that email address that you see there on the screen, banking@ecidevelopment.com. And I'll just wait a quick moment for those folks who do want to get an email off to send that, but banking at
Thank you, Rachel.
ecidevelopment.com. Of
Right,
course.
thank you. And the reason that we put this slide in was specifically because of the number of comments and questions when people were registering for the webinar about banking. So thank you for adding this slide.
Yeah, and absolutely. And one point that I do want to mention is that Mike is talking about an international bank specifically with KeyBank. There is another sort of bank account that people open when they're living here in Belize, and that's a local bank account where the currency is denominated in Belize dollars. Now, that's a lot more difficult to get if you're not a resident or if you don't own property here. It definitely is a lot more difficult in that case, but that's where if you had bills that you needed to pay when you're in Belize, you'd be able to pay that with your Belize dollars. So just wanted to make that distinction because there are two different types of banks in every country that you go to, really, an international bank and a local bank. Alrighty, moving on here. This was another topic that I had quite a few questions about were the residency programs. I do want to mention that there is no residency or there's no citizenship by investment program in Belize. For those of you who are familiar with us as a company, you probably know about our TEEK program in Panama, where you can invest in TEEK for about $22,000 and obtain residency, permanent residency in Panama. Belize does not offer an option like that. There are two residency programs in the country. It's very simple. The first one is the Qualified Retired Persons Program. And take a look at this. You only need to be 45 years or older to apply for the Qualified Retired Persons Program. Now, with this, you do need to spend 30 days a year in the country. And one of the big benefits is that you can bring items in duty-free. You can also bring in a vehicle duty-free. On Ambergris Caye, we get around by golf cart, so most people tend to bring in a golf cart or a Polaris or mule or something along those lines, but you can also bring in your household goods. You can open a company, but you can't work. So this one is a little controversial. I'd say if you're planning to do the QRP, just plan to retire down here. Keep it as simple as possible for yourself. Now, the second residency here is a permanent residency, and that's the best name I found for it. You could be any age, and the requirement to obtain your permanent residency is that you must be living in Belize for the first year. You can leave up to 14 days, but you must be in the country over a calendar period for 1 full year plus 14 days. So this one is a little bit more difficult if you travel or spend a lot of time abroad for conferences or events or whatever you may be doing. But if you're able to make that 1 year work, then you're able to receive your permanent residency after that. And this can also lead to a passport after 5 years. Belize, here we have a saying called Belize time, where things just happen a little bit slower. So if you are looking for a passport as your best option, there's no guarantee, the timeline as to when you would receive it, but you are able to apply for a passport after that 5 year period. And then, of course, the big one here is that you can work in the country. You are going to be required to have a work permit if you are planning to work in the country. It is a little bit difficult for folks to get, but not impossible. But I would be happy to talk to anybody about that a little bit more one-on-one if that is a goal for you. But the other way to obtain citizenship, if your main goal is a passport, is primarily through this permanent residency option here at the bottom of the screen. We do have a residency booklet where if you want the further details to this, I'm happy to provide it to you. And one more point that I do want to mention is that as a tourist, you can come into the country for 30 days. Your tourist visa is a 30-day visa. You can get it renewed typically up to 6 times before the immigration department will tell you that it's time for you to leave, and you come back after 72 hours. But there is a charge. It's about 25 US dollars for the first 3 months, and then the next 3 months would be $50 US. There's no guarantee that they'll stamp you again after the 30 days, but you most definitely cannot be working in the country if you're just here on a tourist visa. Please bear that in mind, since I have had some folks ask that. And then, of course, when it comes to bringing your family abroad, you do want to make sure you have Fido along, or any of your pets. It is fairly easy to bring your cat or dog to Belize. And again, just send us an email if you want those details on how to bring your furry friend. Now, another reason people are looking at Belize is because there is a growing economy. And a lot of the growth happening right now is in the tourism sector. In 2008, 2009, Belize realized what a gem of a country they have. They hired this big marketing firm to help them market the country, because it's a small place and a lot of people had no idea where in the world Belize was, besides the adventurous travelers or the divers or the snorkelers or fishermen who are coming here to be on the reef. But as you can see, over the past 10 years, there really has been significant growth in the tourism market. We saw a report, and I don't have it in this presentation, but I can send it to folks, where people are, where the first quarter of this year outperformed last quarter or last year's quarter at this time, and we're just seeing these numbers continue to increase. And a lot of that has to do with the Southwest effect, with it being easier for people to get to the country, and generally with mainstream travelers and tourists knowing about Belize. So we saw a nearly 15% increase in tourism growth from 2017 to 2018. And as a result, what we're seeing are these big name brands are coming in, because they understand that there is a demand for a product that is not yet currently here in the country. Because Belize has primarily been a mom and pop type destination for years, what you tend to find are the smaller cabanas and thatched roofs, which is cute, but doesn't really appeal to many travelers. They're looking for the conveniences. When they get there, they want to make sure there's not going to be cockroaches in their room or something along those lines. And it's really up to some of these big brands to come in and be able to accommodate these adventure travelers who are coming to Belize now. In addition, Mother Nature's splendor. This is a huge reason why people are coming to Belize, because they just like the simplicity. They like the Caribbean, the jungle scape, and with it being fairly easy to get here, they're finding more and more ways to do it and more time to get away for some R&R. So where you'll see on the screen are some of the primary places where people are going. Corozal's in the northern part of the country, and this is on the bay. So what you tend to find are calmer waters up there. San Pedro Ambergris has been around for years. Madonna wrote a song about San Pedro called La Isla Bonita, and I think that came out in 1987 or 1988. That's a fun one to listen to, but talked about the tranquility of Ambergris Key. Cayo District is another popular place for people who are looking for hiking and mountains and jungle scape and nature preserves. It's a really great place for that. Turnif Atoll is a popular place for divers who want more of a private island sort of setting. And then Placencia has been growing in terms of people who are looking for single family homes and a quieter version, I'd say, of San Pedro. So these are some of the top places where people are going today. And people are coming to Belize for many different reasons. A lot of them are coming to do the diving and the snorkeling of the reef, because the country and Ambergris Key also here parallels the longest living reef in the world. It's the second largest in size, but longest living reef. We tend to find that a lot of folks are coming for the water activities. So the Blue Hole is included in that. They're coming to do paddleboarding and kayaking, and because it is in the reef, you do get the calmer waters too. So the Belize Zoo Jaguar Preserve, you'll find that there are a lot of neat animal sanctuaries. Belize is really big on preserving the ecosystem, a very green country. So they want to make sure that all of their nature preserves are in natural settings and that the animals are being well taken care of. Fishing, I think we talked about that a little bit before, but there are 3 fish here for catch and release permit: tarpon, and bonefish is the third one. And these are big reasons why people are coming down. Mayan ruins are also fantastic to see. They're scattered all throughout the country. So a lot of good reasons why people are coming to Belize. Some folks are more beachgoers and will hang out on ambergris. Some are more adventurous and trekking up the Mayan ruins. Some are going cave tubing, which is a lot of fun. You go on an inner tube down through caves on the river. So a lot of exciting adventures happening here in the country. And we have a neat resource guide, 15 must-dos when coming to Belize, that if anybody is planning to come anytime soon, I'd be happy to send those to you and help you really plan your itinerary so that you get to see everything. And this is just the beginning. You'll have an unbelievable time, and you'll start to hear that more and more. Unbelievable, you better believe it. A good play on words where you can have a lot of fun with it. But there's quite a bit to do, and regardless of what you like to do, that you'll find something. So why Belize? Point number 7 here is because there is also affordable Caribbean real estate and low property taxes. And we're going to jump into some specific property opportunities a little bit later in this presentation. But I have a feeling that this is why many of you are on the webinar tonight. And what we're seeing right now is that Belize really is at the sweet spot of this real estate investment curve right now. And the reason I say that is because we look at the chart over here, and at the top part of the curve, we see countries like Pacific, Costa Rica, Panama. In these countries at the top part, we're seeing that the real estate here has matured. It's a lot more expensive to get into a beachfront condo or home in Pacific, Costa Rica, and Panama than it is at the parts at the bottom of the curve here. Now, at the bottom of the curve, Caribbean, Costa Rica, Nicaragua, these are countries that haven't really matured yet in the sense of tourism like Pacific Costa Rica has. So it's lower entry pricing, may not necessarily be producing the sort of cash flow that Pacific Costa Rica and Panama are, but there's high levels of appreciation. So it just depends on what your investment goals are. You may find that one country on this curve works better for you. Now, most of us are looking for the best of both worlds. We want real estate that hasn't yet plateaued, that has the opportunity to continue appreciation, and we also want cash flow. Now, because of the tourism rates and the increase in tourism and the lack of great product in the market, what we're seeing is this real opportunity for real estate investors to get into the market. And here's a quick case study, an example of a condo that was for sale at the Atlantis. You probably heard of it, in the Bahamas. It was a 1-bedroom, 523 square feet, going for $595,000. Now, I don't have on there the year that it was built, but you can see it has beautiful views, a beachfront 1-bedroom place. In Belize, now you'll find that there is real estate in a branded hotel on the Caribbean beachfront with very similar views starting under $400,000. And that you can see square footage is about the same, 1 bed, 1 bath, 541 square feet for about $200,000 less. That's significant. This is opportunity, and the opportunity here in Belize is right now, and we're going to talk about what that means. But not before getting to another poll. All righty. And I hope everyone gets this one right. We did talk about it just a little while ago. All right, launch poll. In what year did Belize gain its independence from Britain? And I'll give you 10 more seconds there. All right, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. All righty, thank you everybody for voting. We are going to look at the end at the results. So much appreciate your attention during the presentation here. All right, here's tip number 2, ditch the LaCroix seltzer. Now this one, Stephen K., if you're on the webinar, you may remember it used to say peanut butter, but now we've been able to get peanut butter here for a pretty reasonable price. So I wanted to give the example of LaCroix seltzer. Now, we live in Latin America, so prices generally are less. But if you're buying imported goods, prices are going to be more expensive than what you're used to. And my latest example was with LaCroix seltzer. You may have all heard of it before. It comes in fun, colorful cans. It's flavored soda water, flavored seltzer. And you can typically get a 12-pack for $3.99 at Walmart. Now, this was a few months ago. I went into one of our supermarkets here and I saw for the first time they had LaCroix Seltzer 12 packs. So I put one in my little basket and I get up to the register. And granted, in the supermarkets, there aren't really prices on things. So you kind of estimate what it's going to be and you go to the register and eventually see. Now, he ended up, the guy at the cash register ended up bringing it up, and it was something like 65 Belize dollars. 65 Belize dollars, because he was selling these at $6, $7 a can Belize, so cut that in half. But so he wanted about $32 US for a 12 pack of LaCroix seltzer, where at Walmart in the States, you get it for $3.99. So I didn't purchase it. I ended up going for the local brands, and that did just fine. But this is something that is more of a general concept than just these LaCroix. What I'm saying here is that you do want to be conscious of what you're purchasing. Some people come back to me and say, you're telling me how inexpensive it is to live in this part of the world. But when I went to the restaurant, the tourist restaurant, it was more than I'd pay back in my hometown. You have to learn how to shop locally, get involved in local to-dos, go to local restaurants. There's quite a bit places that you can go to and live a very affordable life here on the island. So there's my tip for you. We can now get peanut butter pretty affordably, but LaCroix Seltzer has just knocked it out of the park when it comes to prices. So this brings us to exploring the hottest spot in Belize. And Ambergris Caye is the little island off the coast of mainland Belize, and it produces 70% of the tourism revenue for the entire country of Belize. 70% of the tourism revenue generated from the country of Belize comes from the little island that you see there at the top right of the screen called Ambergris Caye. Now, Ambergris Caye has been wildly known for its diving and fishing and snorkeling because it parallels the reef. And you may be able to see there on the screen where that dark blue line is, that's the reef. So you can see how close this island truly is to the snorkeling and fishing. So that comes back to the primary question is, what are you looking for in terms of real estate? Some of you, I recognize your names and you're looking for rental property. Other folks are looking for residential. Maybe some of you are looking for a combination of both. That goes a little bit back to our investment chart earlier or investment graph. But some of you just aren't really sure what you're looking for. And you're doing the right thing now by attending these webinars, reading the handbooks, asking questions, letting us know what you have on your mind so that we can help guide you maybe to Belize, maybe to somewhere else, wherever may be the better fit for you. But if you're looking at this country or you're looking at opportunities from the perspective of what's going on currently, I'd always recommend to look at these trends that you see here on the screen. Number one is, what does the airlift look like? Are there more planes that are coming? Are there more direct flights that are coming to that country? That's a really great indicator of what the airlines believe in and what they're investing in. Also look at the tourism numbers. How is tourism doing in the country? What is the country doing to promote itself as a tourism destination? And number three, another huge indicator is, are there hotel brands there? If not, are hotel brands coming? And you can best believe that airlines and hotel brands spend a lot of resources, time, money, energy, human resources coming to these countries, investigating, doing their feasibility reports, and really making sure it makes sense before they make this tremendous investment into the country. So if you're looking for investment in real estate, I would absolutely recommend, regardless of where you're looking at, to follow the trends that you're seeing. Belize, we talked about, is indeed the right place at the right time. Here are some throwback photos from Ambergris Caye, specifically 1980s. This is the airstrip on Ambergris Caye. For those of you who've been, you know that it now looks a little bit more like this. It's actually paved. There are waiting areas and lobbies, whereas before they didn't quite have that. 1980s. This is even before they had the airstrip over here. But you can see it was all sandy roads and just a few houses. This is what it is today. And Belize and Ambergris Caye specifically is a very charming and colorful Caribbean country. And the island that we have here, it's a colorful and eclectic, and it's really just a beautiful place if you're looking to relax, if you're looking for a slower pace of life. Here's a photo looking directly out on the reef. You can see the white waves in the distance. That is the reef. We get around by golf carts. So that's a fun mode of transportation for somebody who's looking to come to the country, get rid of your car, and instead you get a golf cart. Fishing, diving the reef. These are all big factors for people who are looking to come to the country. And one of the really neat parts that a lot of people like about Belize and Ambergris Key is that it's very open in the sense where you don't have these large gated all-inclusive hotels that stand alone by itself. Ambergris Key is a very open environment where you are encouraged to support the local businesses. Go try different restaurants around. It's a safe place. It's a place where I've mentioned to you, I've been here for 7 years. I don't have barbed wire around my condo or anything along those lines. It's a place where you get to know the locals and the locals get to know you. They're very warm and welcoming to you being there. And you'll tend to find that if you make the move and you're spending time here, you may end up having more local friends than you do expats. But it's a really great environment. And because this really is the central hub for the country, we do have a lot of folks who are moving here full time because we have a lot more options and restaurant choices. In addition to that, there's just a better infrastructure here generally for those digital nomads on the line. You're pretty much able to work anywhere on the island. We have fiber optics, so it's consistently great internet day in and day out. So you may have kids ask you for a ride to school. That's not uncommon. They'll just jump on the back of your golf cart. And as we talked about before, a lot of diving there on Ambergris Key. And you could just see those numbers represent some of the dive sites right off of the coast. A lot of water activities, fishing, diving, snorkeling, kayaking. In addition to that, we have a lot of land activities that people like to participate in. And Stephen K., I don't know if you're still on the line here with us, but you mentioned Lobster Fest in an email to me earlier today that you'll be joining us for it. We're really excited for that. This is a really fun activity if you're able to make it for next month. We introduced lobster into the cuisine because lobster season was closed until June 15th. So if anybody's interested in coming down, experiencing Lobster Fest, we are going to give some special rental promos for folks who join the webinar. Just email webinar or just mention webinar when you email info@grandbayman.com and we'll get those to you. But in addition to that, we have wine socials at Wine Divine, and Costa Maya is a beauty pageant where the different countries in Central America come and represent their countries. It's a really beautiful time. Crazy Canucks has Sunday Fun Day. A lot of activities like this going on where you don't have to just be a water bug to enjoy Ambergris Key. In addition to that, a lot of community outreach is done. This is a significant reason why a lot of our shareholders and property owners decide to become a part of ECI Development, because they personally like also doing this community outreach. But we have a food bank coming up this Sunday where our team will be making hot dogs. I just found out for some of the folks here on the island who depend on the food bank in order to get fed. So a lot of great ways for people to get involved. And we certainly encourage that, especially if you're planning to come down to live here. Even if you're coming for a little bit of time to rent, there's a lot for you to do. And the one thing I am going to say is, if you are planning to come down to Belize, please bring with you school supplies. We have a couple of drop boxes here at Grand Bayman where we're able to bring those to schools where there are products that they have items in need, such as notebooks and pens. You can go to our website, grandbayman.com, to see a list of what the schools currently need. But this is huge, and it's just a super easy way to give back as you're coming on vacation to a lovely paradise. All right, this one should not be tricky, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Launch the poll. Where in Belize are 2/3 of overnight visitors heading? And I'll give you guys just a few more seconds here. I see it's a total win. 100% of folks have guessed this. All right, we have 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Perfect. We're going to close the poll here, and we're going to go through the results at the end. And that brings us to tip number 3. So I'm often asked what sort of currency they use in Belize. We know at this point that they use Belize dollars, but you can still use US dollars here. And I would actually recommend bringing your US dollars. If you purchase anything, you'll tend to get Belize dollars back. Sometimes if they have enough US, they'll give you US back. But bring small US bills with you. I have never seen a currency exchange booth in the Belize City Airport. They definitely don't have one, so don't expect to exchange any currency there. but bring your small US dollar bills with you and you'll be set. And then also when you're in Belize at these little tchotchke shops, don't ask if it's in Belize dollars or US dollars. Assume that it's going to be in Belize dollars since you're in Belize. Alrighty, so we are going to jump into the property section here and talks about some communities and opportunities that we have available for you right now. Now, Grand Bayman is one of our popular communities. We are located in a really ideal location, about half a mile south of this downtown area, but there is quite a bit around us. We have the supermarkets, restaurants, bars, live music, hardware stores, clinics, pharmacies, fruit stands, everything really within walking distance. To get to from the beach right over here to the Grand Bayman Gardens community, it takes about 4 to 5 minutes walking, so it is quite close. And this is a property that has really been designed for the entry-level investors or vacationers who don't want to spend an arm and a leg on accommodations when they come to Belize. Typically, if you want beachfront property to rent, you're going to be paying $200, $300, $400 a night for that rental. Now, a lot of folks are coming down and want to spend $120, $150 a night, but are having a really difficult time finding that. So Grand Bayman Gardens is a great alternative to folks who don't necessarily want to spend high rates on accommodations, but also want to get into the Belize market maybe from an investment perspective and don't necessarily want to spend $400,000, $500,000, $600,000 on real estate. So it's a great community. It's where I personally live. We've recently done the pool, opened up the bar and restaurant over here, redone the fitness club and the tennis courts, and it's a really great community where you find a lot of long-term renters as well. We have medical school right around the corner, so a big demand for people who are looking for long-term rentals. At this point, Grand Bayman Gardens has 4 buildings that are up, constructed. We've delivered 54 condos to their owners. Anchor Buildings is sold out at this point, Captain Building, Dolphin Building, and the Explorer Building. As I mentioned to you, I am an owner here. I wasn't initially planning to live in my condo. I thought I would have it as a long-term rental, but I do have a long-term renter now, and that is, in fact, me. So the Fleet Building is a property that I want to talk to you about for a couple of minutes because this is a building that we've spent quite a bit of time working on with our architect and interior design to really capture a building that was designed with the owner in mind. And what I mean by that is we put special features in that folks who are looking at living in the condo or perhaps renting it from long-term or nightly perspective we're looking for. And so, for example, we have walk-in closets. Now, this is something that you may think, oh, wow, that's great. But when you go to a lot of the properties here, there just tends to be a lack of closet space. And so for long-term renters or people who are planning to live here full-time, you just don't tend to have that space to put your stuff. In addition to that, we made sure that there were spacious balconies on all of the condos. The reason for that is because a lot of times we live outdoors. Here it is summer year round. So we want to enjoy the warm air, get outside, spend time on the balcony, read a great book, watch the birds, whatever the case may be. In addition to that, we already have amenities in place. So there's that convenience there. And this is convenient for long-term renters who have a grill right there and a pool and gym. And it's also convenient for owners who have these amenities in place already, whereas a lot of properties don't offer these sort of amenities, especially a tennis court. There are only a couple of tennis courts here on the island, and being able to offer that is a huge advantage. In addition to that, the turnkey comfort. Now, this is big. The connecting doors between the condos, what that does is it allows the owners to provide personal space and rental space and really have the flexibility to rent it as a studio or a 1-bedroom or combine it as a 2-bedroom, or maybe they just want to buy the studio and someone else is going to buy the 1-bedroom. Whatever the case may be, what we're finding is that it's very convenient. You may have long-term guests on the other side, such as your family, but it gives you that convenience and that comfort. In addition to that washer-dryer hookup, again, it sounds very silly, but could you imagine being somewhere for 6 months and not having access to a washer-dryer in your condo? Again, these are things that you just don't tend to find here in the condo development. In addition to that, owner lockout closets. And this is ideal for all of our and this is in all of our condos. And the reasons that we're doing it is because we realize that people are looking for a place to put their stuff, whether they're there full time or they're there for a few months out of the year or maybe a week out of the year. They want somewhere to put their stuff. So all of our condos do offer that. We have condos starting under $113,000. That's a turnkey price for a studio, going up to about $315,000 for a 2-bedroom, 2-bath. And again, you can see, if you can follow my cursor right over here, that connecting door, the owner lockout closet, washer, dryer. So little things that make a really big difference in the quality of life. So we do have a webinar special. If you decide that you want to be an owner at Grand Bayman within the next 7 days, we will offer you $2,000 off your furniture package. Just do a quick email to us right now and we'll get you the details, info@ecidevelopment.com, and then subject line can just be fleet number 1. And we do have 50% financing available with Key International Bank. So I'll give you just a moment there to email that over if you do have interest in it. All right. We're going to move on here to the second opportunity, and this is the Belize Marriott Residences and Resort on Ambergris Caye. And for those of you who are looking at real estate, you know location, location, location. The Belize Marriott Residences is located right on the beach, less than half a mile from town, and just a truly ideal location. And when we were coming up with the architecture for this specific property, what we were looking at were other standout properties. And because Belize has such a rich history, a rich British colonial history, we decided that we wanted to capture this real British colonial essence. So there's a property called the Moana Surfrider in Hawaii, which is here on the screen. And we took similar elements from this property as to what we'll be bringing to Ambergris Caye. So you'll drive your little golf cart in and go right under here, and then the valet guy will drop off your luggage and will take your cart and park it on the side, and you'll walk right into this beautiful lobby looking right out at the Caribbean waters and have this experience that you just don't have yet here on Ambergris Caye. Again, more pictures of the Moana Surfrider, really doing a great job at highlighting these British colonial elements. So one reason, and this is actually a huge reason why this property is very unique compared to other properties here on Ambergris Caye, is because we're really going to be catering to this conference group, meeting groups, large events, where right now Ambergris Caye simply does not have the space at a beachfront hotel to accommodate large groups, meetings, events, etc. So you'll see here some of the features that we will have at the Belize Marriott Residences and Resort include the meeting rooms, the spacious conference center, the ballroom, the pre-function space, event green space. There's going to be so much here that'll bring in this group that is not able to come to the country solely because there isn't adequate space for them. In addition to that, it'll have in residence dining, which we all enjoy, 2 beautiful oceanfront pools, a resort pool and a private adult-only pool. There'll be a rooftop lounge with beautiful views of the sunrise and the sunset, and of course, retail space, spa, gym, and a casino as well. So this is an ideal place where if you're looking to capitalize on the market that's happening right now and you want to own a property at a branded hotel, this would make the most sense for you. And Mike, if you're still here on the line, why don't you talk to us a little bit about what this slide means, where it says ECI will retain 60% of the residences.
Yeah, sure. And I am still here. It's definitely a long webinar, but you have a ton of information to cover tonight, and you're doing a great job. Thank you, Rachel. One of the things that we've seen over the 24 years of working, not just in Belize, but throughout the region, is that many times condo developers are building a condo hotel, and they're selling 100% of the condos, right? They're going to sell all the condos to other people because it's such a great investment. And really my question that I always kind of scratch my head and say, well, if it's such a great investment, why are you selling all of them? Why aren't you keeping as many as you possibly can? Because, talk is cheap, right? I mean, for us, when we did the analysis of these the need for a hotel, the feasibility studies, all of the things that go into the research and behind the scenes, pre-feasibility, all of those kinds of things. We saw the incredible need for a branded product on Ambergris Caye. And we decided very early on that we, ECI Development, the development company in this case, our company, was going to retain as many of these residences as we possibly could, because we wanted the cash flow, we wanted the return on investment that they would produce for us and our company. And so we built a model that really lets us hold on to as many as possible, in this case about 60%, maybe even a little more than 60% of the residences. And we're offering, what's the number, Rachel? 68 out of 202, I think is the final count, right?
Exactly.
So we're offering 68 units for sale to outside individuals. We are keeping 132 or whatever the math on that is internally for ourselves. So I think the important takeaway from a slide like this is just simply, the proof's in the pudding. We have our money where our mouth is. Again, it's easy to say that something's a great investment, but if it's a great investment, why are you selling all of them? We're going to keep as many as possible, because we absolutely believe that this is going to be a grand slam on the island of Ambergris Caye. And the folks that end up owning these residences will be very, very glad that they bought one to have whole ownership of a Marriott residence on Ambergris Caye. This is really going to be a grand slam. So yeah, thanks for letting me share that point.
Of course. Thank you, Mike. And here's just a recap of what you said, and you got your numbers correct. 202 key community containing studios up to 3 bedrooms. And like Mike mentioned, ECI is retaining 60%. So 42 at this point are sold. So that brings us to 26 at this point that are available for private ownership. And of course, when people are coming to Belize, specifically Ambergris Caye, one thing they are looking for is to have a beautiful view of the Caribbean waters with the reef right out there, and the residences will have that true oceanfront view of the Belize Barrier Reef. So of course, in addition to the great location, it has incredible views to boot. Now, depending on what your interest is, some folks are looking at studios, others are looking all the way at 3 bedrooms. Let us know what it is that would best suit you. I know we have some realtors on the line, maybe what would best suit your clients, and we can certainly start the conversation and look at options and opportunities there at the Belize Marriott residences. Now, I don't have a tremendous amount of time left, and I don't have really other slides on this, but I wanted to quickly talk about a webinar special for Canal Front 2-bedroom, 2-bath. ECI recently acquired 6 2-bedroom, 2-bath condos at a wonderful canal front location on Ambergris Caye, and we're offering those condos for $179,900. Now, we haven't done any marketing of this. You're not going to find it on our website. We haven't sent any email promos about it. But of course, because we had so many folks who are interested in Belize for this presentation, I wanted to bring this up. So we have 2 condos at this point that are furnished currently in the rental program, and we are offering these 2 condos, furniture included, and $5,000 off if you decide to pay cash for you. Now, like I said, we only have 2 at this point. And of course, we want you to come down and see the property, but if you're at least able to put down a fully refundable reservation deposit, that will lock you in as you come down and do your due diligence. For that 23 or 22% who's already been to Ambergris Caye, you may not necessarily need to come down because you have an idea of where we're located. But this is a really great opportunity because 2-bed, 2-bath certainly don't start at $179,000 on the island. This is a real steal. So I'm going to give you just one moment there to email info@ecidevelopment.com with subject line Canal Front if you are interested in learning more about this property here. And like we have with our fleet and our Marriott building, we are offering financing for this project. So bear that in mind. All right, so if anybody's interested in talking to some of our current owners, I'm happy to do that introduction for you. We have a really great group of ECI Development family members, whether they're shareholders in the company or TEAC owners or condo owners, really make up a great group. And with that, and I think, Joel, I hear you on. Are you there?
Hey, Rachel. Yeah, I'm here.
Amazing. So Joel is an amazing fellow. He heard that we were doing a presentation about Belize and realized that, like Mike said earlier, there's a lot more to Belize than just the real estate. So he wanted to talk to you about awesome asset protection opportunities for you. And just so everybody is aware, Joel is currently in Austria, where I think it's what, 2 in the morning?
Yep, just a little
Oh.
after 2. That's right.
Well, I thank you for being on with us tonight, Joel. Really
No, it's my
appreciate it.
pleasure.
Just so you know, I don't think you have the screen in front of you, but folks have your contact information right there. And I'm going to switch to your slide right now. And we have your most common structures and strategies slide up if you want to get started. Thank you so much.
Sure. Well, thanks for having me on the program tonight. It's good to be with you, and actually learned some interesting facts about the properties that you have for offer. So glad to participate. I think that when people think about Belize, there's really a couple things that come to mind. Certainly real estate, whether you're coming short term as a tourist to enjoy the sun and the beach, whether you're coming as a snowbird or full-time resident. If you're coming for a longer period of time, then that's where looking at something like the retirement program makes a lot of sense. The QRP program is very popular for people that want to come in and live in Belize for longer periods of time than you can stay as a tourist visa. And it's in a sense it's like being an offshore person, because while you can stay full time in Belize, it doesn't subject you to any of Belize taxes. And that kind of leads me into the main point of the slide that you can see, and that is that Belize is known as a international financial service center. Some people refer to it as a tax haven because it doesn't levy any direct taxes on income. It doesn't levy any capital gains taxes or estate taxes. Now, this isn't to say that if you're an American or Canadian or European that you don't owe taxes in your home country. You still do, but you don't owe taxes in Belize. And I think that's important. It doesn't add another layer of taxation. So when people think about buying property, or even if they just think about creating a structure in Belize for asset protection, for estate planning purposes, to pass on assets to their children, the structures and strategies on your screen are really the main ones that people contemplate. Trusts are really in my view, the Cadillac structure that exists in Belize. An asset protection trust is virtually impenetrable in Belize. Again, it's not subject to any kind of taxation. It is considered to be its own juridical person, which is really important. If somebody sues you and an asset's in your asset protection trust in Belize, they're not going to be able to attach or go after that asset. So that's really an important type of structure to contemplate. It can be a simple structure, can be a complicated structure. It's a uniquely individual structure, and it's created between the client and the lawyer. And then when the lawyer's done drafting the trust document, it's something that is between the client and the trustee, whose job it is to operate the trust according to the rules and the language of the trust itself. You have irrevocable trusts and you have revocable trusts, depending on what you're trying to accomplish. Irrevocable trusts are the stronger of the two when it comes to asset protection. After companies, you have foundations. Most countries in the world fall under either the English common law rules or the Napoleonic civil law rules. And Belize is kind of unique in that even though it has common law trusts, which are the main type of asset protection vehicle that you can contemplate, foundations are also established by statute in Belize. So if there's a reason you want to have a foundation, whether it's a nonprofit foundation, for-profit, what's called a private interest foundation, you can set that up in Belize. It gives you It's sort of a hybrid between a trust and a company. You have a board like a company. It's a separate juridical person like a trust. After foundations, you have all different types of companies. In Belize, we have the LLC structure, which works really well with an IRA. If you decided, for example, that you wanted to invest or purchase a ECI property that you heard about tonight from Rachel, and you want to do that through your IRA, then the LLC is a good way to do that. We can actually marry a foreign LLC back to a domestic IRA account. The money moves down into your LLC and then can be used to purchase the property. And conversely, as your property earns income for you, that income would move from your LLC up into your IRA account, which will allow it to stay tax deferred. That's a very popular type of vehicle, and we see it frequently for people that want to hold assets abroad, invest in different type of investments. They do that through IRA LLC structures if that's where they have their money. In addition to LLCs, you've got a basic IBC, International Business Company. Think of it as a C corporation, but it doesn't have, again, it doesn't have the layer of taxation. If you have a C corporation in the U.S., you pay tax at the corporate level, then you pay again at the individual level. With a Belize IBC, there is no tax at the corporate level. In addition, you have what's called a Belize 250 company. In some cases, you have to use a local Belize 250 company, particularly when you're buying real estate. And we could certainly talk about the 250 structure for anybody that's thinking seriously of buying property, ECI property, and not using IRA funds and wants to do it in a local company. We can certainly help them with that kind of structure. So those are the main types of structures that we have out there. There are some other strategies you see on there. We can help you, for example, use life insurance proceeds to buy property in some cases. Belize is also a big center for offshore insurance. There are a lot of flexible things you can do with insurance offshore that you can't do in the U.S. or you can't do in Canada. So we have people that roll over their life insurance policies in some cases, or set up a new policy offshore, and that's something to consider. Debt is a strategy, that can help not only give you the liquidity you need offshore to purchase something, but it can also be used as a vehicle to protect property in the U.S. or Canada. Because obviously you can't pick property up and move it. So, encumbering it with debt makes it very unattractive to potential plaintiffs or people who would come after your property. So those are really that's a presentation that I give at a lot of conferences, and I'll spend anywhere from 45 to 90 minutes. We ran through it in about 6 or 7 minutes. I'll stay on the line, and if there's time, I'll certainly answer any questions associated with structures and strategies, whether it's to own property or just in general. Otherwise, if you don't get a chance to ask your question, I think Rachel said she would make my contact information available to everyone, and feel free to send me an email. And if this is something that's very important to you, this topic, let me know and send me a note, and we can even set up a complimentary conference call just because you were on this call today. So I think I did it within the time you gave me, Rachel.
That was awesome. Thank you so much, Joel. And I do have a slide here on the screen offering 2 of your free reports for the 15 global strategies to protect your wealth and the 20 frequently asked questions on international IRAs. Folks, you see Joel's contact information there on the screen. So I would recommend you're able to reach out to him. And as Joel mentioned, he'd be happy to chat with you about your situation and see what really makes sense for you. So Joel, again, I really appreciate you joining us tonight. I know that you were able to consolidate a lot in this short time. So I do encourage everybody to reach out if they think that they can learn a little bit more about what Joel's chatting about here. And again, there's his email address, nagellaw@aol.com. Alrighty, now we're going to go through the results from the polls. So the first question was, how many districts are there in Belize? And a lot of people thought there were 7, but there are indeed 6. There's Belize District, Cayo, Corozal, Orange Walk, Stand Creek, and Toledo. The other question, number 2 here, is what year did Belize gain its independence? The answer is C, 1981. And then the last question is, what part of Belize produces 2/3 of the tourism revenue for the country, or where 2/3 of the tourism visitors coming to? And the answer there is C, Ambergris Caye. So nicely done. Thank you, everybody, for participating in the poll. And to say thank you, we also have a Belize handbook that it will be coming your way right after the presentation here. If you haven't yet had the chance to go through it, take the time to review it. It covers a lot of great information. We just started to touch upon it during the webinar here, but anything from what the government looks like to the different districts to the holidays that are celebrated, and that'll be coming to you directly to your inbox after this webinar. And to say thank you again, what we're going to be doing in that same email with the handbook is sending you a link to complete a survey. And the survey just helps us learn more about what you're interested in so that you're receiving information that is relevant to you. And we're going to be doing a drawing at 4 p.m. on Friday. That's Belize time, and not Belize time as in late, but 4 p.m. Mountain time. So you do want to make sure that you get your submissions in before then, because the winner, we're going to enter everybody who completes the survey into a drawing to win 2 complimentary nights on Ambergris Caye at our property. So be sure to complete that survey when it gets to you. And I think in the email it says to have it done by noon Belize time on Friday. So when you get that, don't hesitate to complete that. It'll take you 4 to 5 minutes at most. But again, it just helps us to make sure we're sending information that is relevant to you. So at this point, like I mentioned, I appreciate everybody who is on after the hour here. There's a ton of great information, and we could probably speak for hours about Belize and the different facets of the country. But what I encourage you to do is type some of your questions there into the questions section of the control panel. We'll answer a handful of them now. For those that we don't get to, we will make sure that we reach out to you directly and get those questions answered. And in the meantime, I'm going to keep these email addresses on the screen. So if there's anything that you heard during the presentation tonight, whether it's banking at Key Bank or just banking generally in Belize, the asset protection guidance from Joel Nagel, or more about the real estate opportunities, feel free to email those email addresses as we're going through the question section here. So for those of you that have to hop off, I understand. I thank you for joining us tonight. And for those of you who are the real warriors with us and are going to stay tuned for the questions, I thank you as well. So I'm going to type here into, I see we have quite a few folks who've been typing questions. So what I'm going to do is get through as many as we can in the next few minutes. And what we can't get through, again, like I mentioned, we'll email it to you. Karen said, I'm residing in Australia, have both New Zealand and Netherlands citizenship. Not sure, would this information be relevant to me? Karen, I think this is all very relevant to you. I know that we talked about North America quite a bit, but we have folks coming from all around the world to Belize, whether coming for a vacation, for investment purposes, to do banking, or set up structures. So just depending on what your interest is. We can certainly help you guide through that, and feel free, if any of the categories here on the screen or something that you want more information about, to just send us an email. Ken asked about time zone. Belize is currently in Mountain time zone, but we don't change the clock for daylight savings time or anything like that. So for half the year, we're in Mountain time, and then the other half of the year, we're in Central time. Ken asked, where does Tropic Air commuter fly? Tropic Air flies all around Belize to Corozal, Placencia, Cayo, Dangriga. It also flies to, of course, San Pedro, Key Cocker. It also flies to the surrounding countries. So you can get to Mexico, Roatan, and Guatemala, or I guess Honduras, really, Guatemala, through Tropic Air. Brett asked, is it possible to get the link to this webinar after it's been aired? Yes, Brett, we will be sending that in an email. It'll be the same email that has the handbook link and the survey link. So just be on the lookout for that over the next couple of hours. Here's a question for you, Mike, asking how long does it take to get a mortgage with Key Bank from application to getting the money?
That's a good question. There's no real simple short answer to that question. It depends on whether the property is in a development that we already work with. If it's one of our properties, we already have all the title documents on file at the bank. We also work with some other developers, and we keep their title documents and all the due diligence on file because it's a repeat kind of customer. So in a repeat customer situation, it can be anywhere from 4 weeks to 8 weeks, and a lot of that's client dependent, FedExing documents, and because you have to open an account to actually have a loan as well. So there's due diligence, and the U.S. Treasury Department has made the due diligence very, very strenuous under the FATCA provisions. Anyway, there's a lot of stuff, but 4 to 6, maybe 8 weeks. If it's a new property that we have to do all the due diligence on, the bank has to do the title research and things like that, then it can take 8 to 12 weeks from, again, inception. Again, depending on the client. If the client walks in with all of that documentation on the first day, it definitely speeds up the process. So the loan application is online. The list of documents that are required is there as well. So if you're looking for a loan, take a look at the Key Bank website, or send a note to the banking at ECI Development and just ask for the loan requirements, and that list will get sent right over to you.
Yeah, that would be great. And just email banking@ecidevelopment.com. I got a message from Luigi earlier with Key Bank. He is on the email. So if you sent him an email to banking@ecidevelopment.com, he has already responded. So feel free to reach out to him there. This is a really good question from Rex. And Joel, I may need your guidance on it. Can I get the Qualified Retired Persons Program now and then get permanent residency later?
Yeah, I'd be happy to answer that. So as I mentioned before, the Belize QRP is you're treated like an offshore, the same way an offshore company works, in the sense that you're not subject to any tax or anything like that. You can live, for just a few weeks a year up to full time, and you don't have to worry about Belize taxes at all. So that's the attractive part. But going to the heart of Rex's question, you can't jump from the offshore track, if you want to use that word, to the onshore track of permanent residence and then eventual citizenship. You could be a QRP for 10 years, 20 years. It'll never lead to citizenship. If you want to go into the citizenship track, then you have to basically start over and go through the normal residency. You could probably talk about that as well as anyone, Rachel, since you spend so much time in Belize. There has been talk about allowing that to happen. There have been a couple of proposals that have floated up to the Parliament that would allow somebody after a certain number of years, probably 5 years, on the QRP to apply for citizenship. But so far that has not happened. I think it could happen in the future, but it hasn't happened yet.
Right. Thank you for that. I've heard similar talk as well, but nothing firmed up at this point. So I'm seeing another question here. Tony asked about mentioning HOA and what HOA fees would be like. I'll get in touch with you directly, Tony, to go through, because they vary depending on the property, but they are all quite comprehensive, and including security for the building and insurance for the building. There's a lot, but also varies by project. Next question I'm seeing here is, Rex, are there car dealerships? What car brands are available to buy? On Ambergris Key, Rex, we drive the golf carts, and you'll find Club Carts, which is typically one of the big brands here. But if you're looking on the mainland, you will tend to find a lot of Toyotas. I think there's Ford as well. But I'd say, you're going to be paying a little bit more for cars if you're buying one here in Belize, because there is an import tax on them. So just bear that in mind. Just really identify if you really need one or not. If you do, then figure out what makes sense for you in terms of purchasing. But we can certainly talk about that a little bit more offline. All right, next question I'm seeing is from Walter, and he said, how many airports are there? Well, there is one international airport in Belize, Belize City International, and then there are a lot of town airports in a sense, where San Pedro on Ambergris Caye has one, Placencia has one, and they're essentially just an airstrip and a little welcome center. Nothing really too exciting, but there are quite a few of those at the bigger towns, Belmopan, Cayo District, around Belize. All right, so I'm seeing a lot more questions come in here. Someone would like the 15 questions. We'll get that over to you. Another person requesting the links. We'll get that over to you. How much longer? This is a great question. How much longer will Exotic Caye be open? Exotic Caye Beach Resort is officially closed at this point. We have started to deconstruct the existing structures there. For those of you who have visited before, you'll see when you come back and visit that there's no pool, there's no outdoor decking and palapa area. That's been deconstructed. And it's really neat as we're finding a lot of the wood is still usable. So we are donating that wood specifically to the Marco Gonzalez Mayan ruin site here on Ambergris Caye, where they'll be using it as little decking areas. And then in addition to that, the yoga studio and where Manatee Max was, we've been deconstructing that and found really beautiful mahogany in the structure. So we'll be integrating that old mahogany into the new building, the new Marriott, if possible, and really excited for that. So not able to stay at Exotic Caye anymore. We have Grand Bayman Gardens open, and they have great rentals there for folks who want to come down, whether for Lobster Fest or for another time of year. All right, I'm seeing a lot of questions come through. So I'm seeing some about rentals. Yes, we can do rentals, nightly rentals, long-term rentals. And yeah, there are a lot of questions here. So what I'm going to do is get back to folks specifically, and then what we'll do is if we have more general questions, we can schedule another webinar just to go through questions and answers, because I'm sure that after you all read the Belize Handbook, there will be more that pop into mind. So with that, I want to say thank you everybody for attending. We really appreciate you staying on with us this far down the line. And I know it's a little bit afterwards. Joel, thank you again for being on with us at now 2:30 your time. I hope you're
my
able
pleasure.
to.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
You're very welcome. And folks, again, there you see on the screen the different email addresses to reach out to if anything is of interest to you. So what we'll do is say goodnight, and again, be on the lookout for that email that's going to have the survey. It'll have the Belize Handbook, has the contact information, again, for these folks that you see here on the screen. We're here as resources for you to help you navigate through this experience of doing business in Belize at whatever capacity that means to you. So thank you again, everybody. Thank you, Mike and Joel, so much for your time. It's much appreciated. And have a really great evening, everybody. We'll be in touch.